And the sun-drenched hills overlooking Silicon Valley, where dreams of silicon and code turned into fortunes overnight, stood Victor Langford's fortress of glass and steel. It wasn't just a mansion, it was a declaration of war against mediocrity, a 20,000-square-foot behemoth with infinity pools that merged into the horizon, home theaters that rivaled Hollywood sets, and walls lined with abstract art that cost more than most people's homes. Victor, at 45, was the undisputed king of this domain. He'd bootstrapped Langtech from a dingy garage startup into a global AI juggernaut, powering everything from self-driving cars to predictive policing algorithms. Governments courted him, celebrities name-dropped him at parties. But Victor was a man hollowed out by ambition. His marriage had imploded 5 years earlier when his wife, Sophia, couldn't bear the endless boardroom battles and the way he treated their staff like disposable code, delete and rewrite at will. "You're not a husband, you're a hostile takeover," she'd screamed before vanishing into the arms of a kinder billionaire. Now, the only constant in Victor's life was Elena Morales, the unassuming maid who slipped into his world at 5 a.m. sharp and didn't leave until the stars faded. Elena was 32, with warm brown skin, raven hair pulled into a severe bun, and eyes that held stories she never told. She wore the standard uniform, starched white blouse, black skirt, sensible shoes that whispered across the marble floors. For 2 years, she dusted the crystal chandeliers, polished the silverware from his private jet, and prepared his kale smoothies with military precision. Victor barely registered her existence, except when he needed to vent the day's frustrations. It started small, the way cruelty often does. One crisp autumn morning, Victor stormed into the kitchen, his custom-tailored suit rumpled from a red-eye flight from Tokyo. He'd just closed a deal worth $500 million, but the jet lag made him feral. Elena was midway through wiping down the quartz countertops, the scent of lemon polish mingling with the espresso she'd brewed for him. "Idiot," he bellowed, hurling his briefcase onto the island. It skidded, knocking over her spray bottle. The liquid splashed across his polished loafers. "Do you have any idea what these cost? More than your monthly rent, I bet. In whatever slum you crawl back to every night." Elena's hands froze mid-wipe. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. Instead, she knelt gracefully, dabbing at the spill with a cloth from her apron. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Langford. I'll clean it right away." "Sorry? Sorry doesn't buy Italian leather," he snarled, towering over her. "You're lucky I don't dock your pay for this incompetence. People like you, scraping by on tips and pity, should be grateful for scraps from my table. Clean it up and stay out of my way." She nodded, eyes fixed on the floor, but as he stomped off to his home office, Elena's fingers tightened around the cloth. Hidden in her pocket, an old silver locket warmed against her skin, a talisman from a life Victor could never imagine. She whispered to it, too softly for the cameras to catch, "Patience, Mama. Just a little longer." Victor's barbs grew sharper with the seasons. By winter, he'd taken to timing her with a stopwatch app on his phone. 3 minutes to make my bed? That's efficiency in the Stone Age, he'd mock, lounging in the doorway of his master suite while she tucked Egyptian cotton sheets with hospital corners. Once, during a holiday gala he'd hosted for 200 tech moguls, Elena circulated with trays of caviar blinis and vintage champagne. Victor, 3 whiskeys in and regaling investors with tales of his latest acquisition, spotted a single drop of condensation on a flute glass she'd handed him. "Clumsy wench," he hissed under his breath, loud enough for nearby guests to chuckle uncomfortably. He flicked the glass toward her, the champagne arcing like golden rain onto her uniform. "Ruined. Just like you. Go change before you embarrass me further. And don't come back until you look presentable, not that that's possible." The guests averted their eyes, murmuring about high standards. Elena bit her lip, the sting of alcohol mixing with the burn of humiliation, and retreated to the staff quarters. There, in the dim light of a single bulb, she stripped off the soaked blouse and stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Scars from a childhood far removed from this opulence traced her arms, reminders of a tiny apartment in East Los Angeles, where her mother had juggled 2 jobs to keep the lights on. One day, Mija, Isabella had always said, braiding Elena's hair by candlelight during blackouts. Our blood runs deeper than their gold. Hold on to that. Elena touched the locket again, popping it open to reveal a faded photograph, a young woman with fierce eyes cradling a chubby toddler boy. The boy's face was unmistakable, Victor's, frozen in innocent joy. She traced the outline with her thumb, steeling herself. This job wasn't just survival, it was reconnaissance. A test of the man her mother had loved and lost. Spring brought no thaw to Victor's demeanor. If anything, the mansion felt colder, echoing with his isolation. He'd begun popping Xanax like breath mints, chasing deals that slipped through his fingers like sand. Langteka's AI patents were his crown jewels, but whispers in the industry hinted at leaks, proprietary code popping up in competitor demos. Victor's temper ignited over trifles. One rainy afternoon, Elena was vacuuming the library when he burst in, phone glued to his ear, mid-rant at a venture capitalist. "No. I won't accept a 10% dilution. You're the one begging for my genius." He slammed the device down just as the vacuum snagged on a Persian rug's fringe. The machine whirred to a halt, and Victor whirled on her. "What the hell are you doing? Destroying my antiques now? That rug was woven by hand in Istanbul, $50,000, you fool. On your knees. Scrub the spot you just made." Elena hesitated for a split second, the first crack in her armor. "Mr. Langford, it was an accident. The vacuum just." "Accident?" He laughed, a hollow bark. "Your whole life is an accident. Illegals flooding in, taking jobs they don't deserve. I should report you to immigration just for breathing my air. Now scrub, or you're out on the street by sundown." She dropped to her knees, the rug's fibers biting into her skin as she worked with a damp cloth. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. Not here. Not for him. As Victor retreated, muttering about ungrateful help, Elena's phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from her cousin in LA, lawyers confirmed the DNA. "Papers ready. You sure about this?" "He's poison, Elena." She typed back, "I have to know. For Mama." Summer arrived like a fever dream, the mansion's air conditioning humming against the valley's relentless heat. Victor's paranoia had metastasized. Sleepless nights blurred into dawn marathons in his office, surrounded by monitors flickering with encrypted emails and stock tickers bleeding red. Langtech was hemorrhaging, a key contract with the Pentagon yanked without explanation, a whistleblower tipped to the SEC about questionable data sourcing. Victor fired his CFO in a boardroom bloodbath, then his head of security for inadequate vetting. The mansion staff dwindled to Elena and a part-time gardener who knew better than to linger. One sweltering evening, Victor found Elena in the wine cellar, inventorying his $2 million collection for an upcoming auction. He descended the stairs in his boxers and a silk robe, a half-empty bottle of 1982 Bordeaux in hand, seeking solace in vintage tannins. "Pour me another," he slurred, thrusting the bottle at her. As she reached for a decanter, his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "Wait, you're new, aren't you? What's a pretty thing like you doing buried down here? Husband run off? Or did you scare him away with that mopey face?" Elena pulled back gently, pouring the wine with steady hands. "No husband, sir. Just me." "Just you," he echoed, swigging deeply. "Pathetic. I built an empire from nothing, and look at me, alone. But better alone than chained to some gold digger." His eyes glazed, unfocused. "My old man was the same. Died rich, died rotten. Left me everything and a note saying, 'Don't trust anyone.' Smart bastard." Elena's heart twisted. She wanted to scream the truth right then, to shatter the bottle and his illusions. But she swallowed it down. "Sounds like a hard lesson, Mr. Langford." He waved her off, stumbling up the stairs. Alone in the cool dark, Elena leaned against the racks, the weight of unspoken words crushing her. That night, she dreamed of her mother, Isabella, young and radiant, laughing in a sunlit park with baby Victor on her hip. The affair had been a whirlwind. Her father, the powerful tech pioneer Reginald Langford, had swept into Isabella's life as a client at the small accounting firm where she worked. Passionate nights turned to promises, then betrayal when Reginald's wife discovered the pregnancy. "Take the money and go," he'd said, wiring a hush payout that barely covered diapers. Isabella had fled to LA, raising Victor until he was 3, then vanishing from his life forever when Reginald's lawyers threatened custody. She'd never spoken ill of him, only wept on Elena's shoulder years later, showing her the locket. "He has his father's fire, Mija. But fire can warm or burn. Pray he chooses warmth." By fall, the crumbling was seismic. Langteka's stock cratered 40% in a week after a rival, Synthocor, launched an AI suite eerily similar to Victor's unreleased Oracle project. Board meetings devolved into shouting matches, investors pulled funding like riptides. Victor, gaunt and unshaven, roamed the mansion like a ghost, barking orders at shadows. Elena moved through her routines on autopilot, laundry, meals, the endless war against dust, but her resolve hardened. The lawyers had called, the will's hidden clause was ironclad, triggered by DNA proof of Reginald's illegitimate line. Half the estate, billions, belonged to her. But the photos she'd snapped in Victor's office? Insurance. Copies of emails hinting at his own ethical corners cut, should he come at her with lawsuits. The breaking point came on a stormy November night. Thunder rattled the windows as Victor, fueled by caffeine and conspiracy, barricaded himself in the security room. The mansion's cameras fed into a bank of screens, a panopticon he'd installed after a minor burglary 2 years prior. Fingers trembling, he scrubbed through footage, days of empty halls, Elena's silent passages. Then, jackpot. 2:17 a.m., 3 nights ago. Elena in his office, door ajar, phone flashlight casting eerie shadows. She perched at his desk, flipping through the Oracle blueprints, snapping photos with clinical detachment. No mask, no gloves, just betrayal in high definition. Rage boiled over. Victor watched the clip on loop until dawn, plotting her downfall. Corporate espionage? He'd bury her in lawsuits, deport her if she so much as blinked. By 6 a.m., when Elena's key turned in the lock, he was in the foyer, a lion in wait, arms crossed over his monogrammed robe, tablet clutched like a weapon. She entered with her usual grocery tote, rain dripping from her hood. One look at his face, and she knew. "Pack your things," Victor growled, thrusting the tablet forward. The footage played, her image frozen mid-snap. "You're done. And don't bother denying it, I have you dead to rights. Stealing my IP? Photographing trade secrets? I'm calling the FBI before you hit the driveway. You'll rot in federal prison, Elena. Years. Decades. And that's before my lawyers bleed you dry." The tote slipped from her fingers, apples rolling across the tile like fallen soldiers. But Elena didn't crumble. She straightened, rain-slicked hair framing a face carved from quiet steel. For the first time in 2 years, she met his gaze, not with fear, but with pity. "I'm not working for Synthocor, Victor. Or anyone else." He jabbed the screen. "Then what the hell is this? Explain, or I'll hit dial right now." She exhaled slowly, as if releasing a breath held since childhood. "All right. But not here. The living room. Sit down." Curiosity warred with fury, but he followed, trailing her like a predator scenting a trap. The living room was a cavern of excess, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the storm-lashed valley, a grand piano no one played, shelves groaning under first-edition tomes Victor never read. Elena gestured to the leather sectional. He perched on the edge, tablet ready to record. From her tote, not groceries, but a battered leather satchel, she withdrew a single item, the locket. She opened it, holding it out like an offering. Inside, the photo gleamed under the chandelier's light, a woman in a sundress, mid-30s, cradling a toddler with tousled curls and eyes like polished obsidian. Victor's eyes. He snatched it, breath hitching. What is this?" "That's Isabella Morales," Elena said, her voice a steady river carving stone. "My mother. Your mother. 38 years ago, she was an accountant in San Francisco, fresh off the boat from Guadalajara. Ambitious, beautiful, alone. Your father, our grandfather, Reginald Langford, hired her firm for his startup's books. He was 40, married, building the first wave of Silicon Valley wealth. What started as late-night audits turned into stolen weekends in Big Sur, whispers of leaving his wife. Then she got pregnant. With you. Victor's knuckles whitened around the locket. Lies. My mother was Elizabeth Harrington Langford. Blue Bloods, Boston debutante. Dad always said. Reginald lied to everyone, Elena cut in gently. To protect his legacy. When Isabella told him, he panicked. Offered her $100,000 to vanish, hush money for a lifetime of silence. She took it, not for greed, but survival. Raised you in a tiny flat until you were 3. Picnics in Golden Gate Park, teaching you Spanish lullabies. But Reginald's lawyers came knocking, threats of taking you away, calling her unfit. She broke. Left you a note, I'll always be your shadow, mi amor. And she disappeared to LA, pregnant with me. Victor's face drained of color, the tablet slipping to the cushion. Thunder boomed, lightning etching his shock in stark relief. Elena pressed on, pulling a yellowed envelope from the satchel, brittle paper, Reginald's spidery script. He died 10 years ago, heart attack in his yacht off Monaco. Left you everything, Langteca's seed, the mansions, the trusts. But guilt ate him alive. This letter, to be opened only if his other child surfaced. I was a coward, it reads. Isabella deserved better. If Elena finds you, Victor, make it right. Half is hers by blood. He tore it open, scanning the words. His hands shook. No, this can't. DNA? Proof. She nodded, sliding a manila folder across the coffee table. Inside, lab reports, timelines, affidavits from the estate attorneys who'd tracked her down after Isabella's death from cancer the previous year. I got the job here on purpose. The agency mentioned discreet, high-profile households. I needed to see you. To know if the brother I'd heard stories about was worth claiming a family with. But you treated me like garbage. Yelled, belittled, made me feel invisible. All while sitting on a fortune built on our grandfather's secrets. Victor staggered to his feet, pacing like a caged wolf. This is insane. You're my half-sister? And the will, half? That's billions. The company would collapse. It doesn't have to, Elena said, voice cracking at last. Tears traced her cheeks, but she stood tall. I photographed those files, the shady deals, the backroom payoffs, not to sell them. To protect myself. I knew you'd fight dirty, just like him. Bury the truth under NDAs and injunctions. But blood isn't a contract, Victor. It's unbreakable. He collapsed onto the sofa, the locket clutched to his chest. Memories flickered unbidden, a faint accent in bedtime stories he couldn't place, a dream of a woman with dark hair singing, Cielito Lindo. His mother, Elizabeth, had been distant, medicated, whispering about ghosts in the family. Now it made sense. The rage, the isolation, it was inherited poison. Elena knelt before him, as she had on that rug months ago, but this time as equal. I didn't come to destroy you. Mama made me promise, find him, Elena. Show him we're more than the money. I endured the cruelty hoping to find a spark of kindness. A brother. But all I got was a stranger who saw me as less than nothing. She rose, gathering the satchel. The lawyers file tomorrow. You can contest it, spin stories, hire PIs to dig up dirt. But deep down, you know. We're tied. Forever. Her footsteps echoed toward the foyer, soft against the storm's roar. Victor's voice emerged, raw and childlike. Elena, please. Don't go. Tell me about her. About us. She paused at the door, hand on the knob, rain lashing the glass like accusations. For a heartbeat, she considered turning back. Then, with a sigh that carried 30 years of waiting, she stepped into the night. Victor remained on the floor, locket in hand, the empire around him suddenly feeling like fool's gold. Alone, truly alone, for the first time. But in the wreckage, a fragile seed of something new, regret, perhaps. Or redemption. The storm raged on, washing away the old world, hinting at one yet to come.